What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Welcome in to another edition of the NFL Weekly. Week 2 is here, and with me, as always, to break it down is my friend and co-host, Mr. Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I am doing well. Here we are in Southern California doing what we do best, and that's complain about almost perfect weather. We had 6-7 days of extreme heat and wine. And now that it's dropped 25 degrees, I guarantee you by Friday morning, I'll be complaining about how cold I am.
Yeah, and look, we are fair weather out here, and that goes both ways. In January, we're fair weather, and in September, because everyone's like, oh, it's August, and summer's almost over. And I'm like, first of all, summer's always going on here. And second of all, September and October are the months it really gets hot here. But yeah, this past weekend, 100 plus for 5 or 6 straight days. We're not built for that, folks. You might roll your eyes at us, and that's fine. I get it. But we're us locals. We haven't been prepared for this. So, but we did get through it. Everyone stayed hydrated, and it's a nice football weekend as well to just kind of calm everything down. That's a great place to start. Obviously, as always, we'll get to our games. We'll be previewing, but let's get some thoughts on week 1 as a whole. I just got my 5 thoughts right here. Just throw them out real quick. Raider Jim, you can add on or throw your own out there. But for me, these are in no particular order. These are just what I wrote down Sunday night. So nothing to do with Monday, but Sunday. First one that popped into my mind, Cincinnati, they're in trouble. Obviously, look, they're notorious slow starters, but my bigger issue is the happiness and the devotion of some of those wide receivers. T. Higgins missed the game, missed pretty much all of preseason as well, wanted to trade. He's out with food poisoning. Okay, I get it. But next week, you can't have food poisoning next week either. So we'll see how that goes. Winning cures all, but I tell you what, if this team starts 0-3, chirping might start. The second thought I had, Deshaun Watson has officially become as bad of a quarterback as he is a human. And no, I'm not going to apologize for that, because I believe today or yesterday it broke that there is another ledger in the Deshaun Watson allegation. Not going to speak on that, but all I will say, again, bad a quarterback as he is a human. And as a podcast I was listening to is, look, you can be a dirtbag human or a dirtbag quarterback. You can't be both. The third, I don't think enough people are talking about Kevin O'Connell as a premier head coach. He is incredible. Obviously, I know it was against the Giants, but if you can get a win in this league with Sam Darnold as easily and comfortably as he did, and going back to last year with Josh Dobbs, I think he is criminally underrated. Number 4, Chargers aren't very talented or deep. However, Jim Harbaugh is going to get everything out of everyone. He is going to juice that team out of everything that they can get. Maybe possibly a playoff team. I was very impressed with the Chargers this week. Sorry, Jim. And then finally, TJ Watt. He's him. Aaron Donald no longer in this league. TJ Watt for me is the unquestioned defensive MVP, or he is the guy every year you look at and you go, it's pretty safe bet we're going to see him in the top 5 in the defensive player of the year. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on week 1?
Yeah, actually, mine is leading with the same one you talked about, and that's New England. Huge week, huge win on week 1 over Cincinnati. New England defense played a great game. And I will tell you, you made the remark about the Cincinnati wide receivers. My thought was, wow, Burrow got sacked, I think, 3 times. So I get it. The New England defense is the better of the two, or, going into the season, they were better, higher ranked than the offense. But to get to Burrow 3 times, Burrow didn't throw for that many yards. And I think we both said it, or kind of, made a passing comment about, all the flash of Joe Burrow is it already kind of evaporating into the wind. So we'll see. I do know they start slow. I think this is something like they're 1-5 over the last opening game, something like that for the last several seasons. but that doesn't mean anything. They should not. You don't play New England, who wasn't that good, and then all of a sudden lose that opening game. And they were at home, correct?
Yeah, since he was, yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll see. I'm with you. They've got a long week coming up too. So we'll see what happens. Deshaun Watson, the Brown season already got worse with all his off-season antics. And then today he came out and said, has nothing to do with the new lawsuit. It has to do with his friend's father passed away, and that was on his mind. Okay. Sometimes you got to play through adversity. I understand. So, I'll just let that rest as it is. New Orleans, is Carr that good, or is Carolina that bad? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out. But as I read a recap of the game, it sounds like Carolina's just that bad. So I'm going to leave it at that. With that game, the Bears, wow, game ball goes to the defense. The Titans blew a 17-0 lead. And if it wasn't for the Chicago defense, who scored a touchdown, and the special teams who ran back a kick, holy cow, where was Chicago going to be? Blowing a 17-0 lead, terrible thing for the Titans. Caleb Williams did not look like a starter at all. 92 yards, I think, is what his final stat was, and that's a shame. Houston looked like Houston. They had to struggle a little bit, but man, when you see Mixon go for 159 yards on game one, yeah, that's promising for that team. So watch out. Houston will be in the mix for sure as we get into the holiday seasons. And I didn't have Coach O'Connell down, but I do have Sam Darnold. I think he looked pretty darn good. I mean, he just kind of got thrown into it the last minute, if you will, lack of a better term. But I thought he did pretty good. And then they also had picked up Aaron Jones. They picked up Aaron Jones from Green Bay to Minnesota, and that guy was running like a son of a gun. And then Daniel Jones, my gosh, what do you say about Daniel Jones? He threw 2 interceptions. One was a pick six, and he's picked up right where he left off. And I just can't imagine being part of the Giant faithful and feeling good about anything.
Yeah. Going back to Chicago, that was obviously Caleb Williams underperformed, to say the least. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But he is a quarterback. In that game, we saw 2 quarterbacks. One lost the game for his team, and the other was just there, if that makes sense. Because that Will Levis.
Somebody has to take the ball.
Oh, my goodness. You want to
Somebody's
talk about.
Somebody's got to take the snap.
Yeah, I think it was the and I hope I'm not getting like headline, grabbed or whatever, because I didn't hear the exact quote, but I believe Tennessee's coach said, once they went up 17-0, he said, if we would have punted on 1st and 10 every drive, we would have won that game. And again, I might have gotten, I didn't hear a quote of it. I didn't read the article. I just saw, and I just chuckled to myself. But I mean, that is kind of where we are with Tennessee. But for Chicago, yeah, for Caleb Williams, it's got to be up from here for him. But again, he didn't lose the game for them. He definitely didn't put them in a position to win, but Will Levis lost that game for Tennessee. It's a tough one. I like Will Levis. I think he's a great story. I think he's a cool, he's got a lot of funny little sound clips out there. He's a heck of a character. But yeah, Chicago, I think they'll take the win, but they are just going to they're not going to celebrate it too much. They're just going to move on to next week. And then back to Cincinnati. It's ironic, I think, because it is 1-4 or 1-5 in their openers. I think under Burrow, ironically, because and everyone in Cincinnati will say, look, it's okay. We do this all the time. However, the one time that they did win their opener, that was the year they went to the Super Bowl. So, not putting too much stock into that, but you can't have too much faith. And it's like, well, yeah, but the one time you did win your opening game, that was your most successful season. So I do think Burrow can figure it out. Is the wrist still an issue? Could be. I don't know. There's a video out there of him grabbing a water bottle. I don't know what everyone is freaking out about. It just looked like he grabbed. I mean, it's not a normal water bottle. It's one of those squeezies. So it's full all the way to the top. Anyways, a lot of conjecture. But the main thing for week one, and the main thing that I need to remind myself, and we tried to remind ourselves last week as well, and you can't overreact to week one. It's very easy to, and maybe unless you're Carolina, because I don't know if it gets better from here. I don't think you're going to lose 47-6 every day, but you can't overreact to week one. At the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, it's 1 of 17. And that's the thing for me going into this week. Again, still not putting any hard-earned money, just going to track my bets. I have to kind of leave last week at the door for a bit. Take in small amounts, but try to kind of filter that stuff to the side. But any more thoughts on week one, Raider Jim, before we dive into our games?
That was my week one recap on things that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, it was. It's great to have it back. Oh, one final thought, and this is just my own little confession. I think I might be getting a little older. This was the first year, sitting down, watching Red Zone. I love Red Zone, watching it about 11:30, 12 o'clock out here on the, on the West Coast. So as the morning games were heading into the quote unquote witching hour, I found myself just like saying, like, can you slow down? Like I'm a little overwhelmed right now, especially, and it's funny you brought up Aaron Jones, because they said Aaron Jones in for a touchdown. In my mind, I'm like, where's Green Bay? Green Bay played on Friday. What is going on? So that was just my little confession. Hopefully this week I'll be a little more prepared for the Red Zone frenzy. But yeah, I did, for the first time ever. I was like, you know what? All those people who say they don't like Red Zone because it's too much, I think I might be heading that way, and I don't know if I like it. But anyways, let's dive into the week 2 preview. We are going to start. So we are recording. And I did want to mention this as well. Obviously, we are recording Wednesday. It is September 11th, so obviously that will always be on our mind as we do go through this 23 years ago today. Wow, what a terrible, terrible day. I'll have a little more on that a little later, but we are recording on Wednesday, and the new program I'm using, for whatever reason, they decide to render the video themselves. So it takes about 4 hours for this video to get to me. So I'm not going to be able to get this out for Thursday. So Thursday Night Football, unfortunately, for the rest of the season, y'all are on your own. Feel free to DM us, and maybe we'll give you our picks for those. But anyways, we are going to start on all of our games on Sunday, and we are going to start in the AFC West. Of course, we are going to start with the Raiders. They are heading to Baltimore to face Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. 8.5-point favorites. This line did move, Raider Jim. I do apologize. I did update a few of these lines. This line did move to 8.5. It was 9.5, I believe, when I put this together yesterday. But Baltimore, 8.5-point favorites. And the over-under sits at 41.5. And as we always say, no one talks Raiders before Mr. Martinez. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, there was the game that I talked about earlier. Let's see, which one was it? It was New Orleans. Is Derek Carr that good, or is Carolina that bad? Are the Chargers that good, or are the Raiders that bad? I'm going to ask that question. The Raiders started out like gangbusters. Their defense, they actually had a defense for all of 30 minutes. And then, unfortunately, there's a second half to the game. Defense got exposed. All of a sudden, the Chargers are controlling the line, opening holes, breaking wide open, some passes out there. But what I was seeing is they were getting controlled at the line. And that was blocking schemes. I get it. But still, where's your defensive guys up in the booth saying, no, we got to shift this, shift that, move this guy, move that guy? There shouldn't have been the running like I saw happening, Chargers against the Raiders. And then the other thing is Antonio Pierce. He got thrust into the job last year, and he won the head coaching job because of his performance after he took over the team in 2023. He may want to watch a couple of the games, and especially this past weekend when DeMeco Ryans in Houston needed 2 yards at the goal line because it was a critical point to either keep them in the game or keep them ahead. You know what he did? He went for it, and he went for it because he had faith in his offensive line. Granted, I did not have a lot of faith in what I saw early on the first couple of drives for the Raiders and the offensive line. They weren't getting a lot of yards. But when you get down into that second half situation, when you are still within grasp, when you still have a chance to either take the lead or to put the game away, and you punt, that's basically telling your offensive line and your offensive coordinator, I don't have any faith in you. So let's just punt the ball. And at that point, it's almost to a degree where it's like, let's just punt the ball and let's get this done with. And so I thought the Raiders had a good first half. When it came right down to it, though, it was, they were a C minus by the time the game was done. I do think Minshew was not as bad as some people have said. I mean, the guy ended up, for all the quarterbacks that played over the weekend, he was right there in the middle of the pack. He was number 8. He had 250 yards, 250 plus yards. He didn't do too bad at all. I mean, he had the one play where I don't know what the hell he was doing, and it went flying to the sidelines.
Part of Minshew mania. I'm sorry. It will happen.
But going into, I'll tell you what, like I say, are the Chargers really that good? I don't know. But they figured out something. And guess what? Baltimore is much better than the LA Chargers. Much, much better. You saw what they did when they were down. They came back and they took it down to the last play of the Thursday night game. And, everybody has seen that by now, where the guy's toe was just a little bit out of bounds. And that kind of blew the whole ball game. But Baltimore's that good. So long Sunday coming up for the Raiders. They are not going to be able to have a solution for Lamar Jackson. And and the Raiders also have no running game. They have no running game. They barely got just over 100 yards amongst 3 different guys. So you're not going to win a game that way. Not against the Baltimore defense for sure. So do they cover the 8.5? Probably. Would I bet the spread on this one at all? No, probably not. But on the over-under at 41.5, I'll take that half point and go 41, because I can see it being 28-14 at the end of the day.
Yeah, this is a interesting one. You were asking yourself, is New Orleans this good or Carolina that bad? Same thing with the Raiders and Chargers. I took it a little different direction, especially on Thursday night. I found myself questioning, is Lamar Jackson a good quarterback? And I know, look, he's arguably, never mind. He is the fastest quarterback in the league. No doubt about that. But he missed, obviously, the toe. He missed multiple game tying, I guess I should say. They were going to go for 2, so it didn't look like we were going to overtime, but at least to tie. Right before that, Isaiah Likely, he missed Zay Flowers and the inside receiver. Yeah. He split them. He split the wide receivers, and it wasn't tipped. It wasn't I literally let out an audible, how did that? I understand what Lamar Jackson can do with his legs, but you need to be able to throw the football as well consistently. And he is an above average thrower of the football. I'm not doubting that, but at an elite level, exactly. And to compete, look, at the end of the day, the Ravens, I'm sure they, love their MVPs for their players and their NFC North or AFC North titles. But at some point, you're going to want to see Lamar Jackson take a step forward into the Super Bowl, if not winning the Super Bowl. And at this moment, missing receivers like that, I don't think this team is good enough. But I will say, I think John Harbaugh, I knew that was going to happen. John Harbaugh is going to get everything out of this run game, though. Between Henry and those as 3-4 headed back with Lamar Jackson, they are going to have that they can rely on to beat bad teams. And I don't think Lamar Jackson's throwing deficiencies, at least that we saw last week, are going to matter in this game. I do like the Ravens against the spread. I had them at minus 9.5. I think they get it done at 8.5 as well. I think one of the main things that we did see last week with the Raiders, and I do hope I'm wrong because I really, really, really do like Antonio Pierce. I think he's a perfect fit for the Raiders. He was outcoached. And I'll be honest with you. Yeah. And there are plenty of coaches in this league that would probably be outcoached by Jim Harbaugh. But now you got another Harbaugh with a better football team. It's just, it doesn't line up. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see this be a touchdown game and me kind of go, oh, I missed that one, or maybe Lamar, starts slow and they do cover. But just for the sake of this, I got to say Baltimore is going to cover this, I would say. And then I do like the under. The the offense for the Raiders is something that this is a team that held Kansas City to 24 points. And I think Kansas City is a much better much better offense than the Raiders will have. This is a body clock game for the Raiders. It's going to be 10 a.m. for them. In their minds, they're going back east. I like it as an under. And I also just think Baltimore's a ball possession team. You're going to see a lot of unders from Baltimore until Vegas kind of starts to bring that number, although this is a pretty low number for them. But they're a ball control team. They want to make this to be about 7-8 possessions each game. If you give the Raiders 7 or 8 possessions, I don't know how they get 3 scores, if I'm being completely honest, unless they get in tremendous field position. But moving on, staying in the AFC West and staying, of course, in the Harbaugh family, it is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. They're also going back east, but a much different back east trip than the Raiders have to deal with. The Chargers are 6.5-point favorites when they face the Carolina Panthers, arguably the worst team in the league. And then the over-under has moved a little bit. It is now 38.5. Raider Jim, AFC West is your jurisdiction. Chargers heading to Carolina as 6.5-point favorites. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Chargers. I mean, they get the Raiders to start, and then they get a break, if you will. Like they didn't have a break last Sunday, but now they're going to play Carolina. Bryce Young, first pass of the season, intercepted. Second pass of the season, he threw it out into somewhere, but there was nobody wearing his team's jersey out there. But that's how his first 2 passes went, and it went downhill after that. The Chargers, on the other hand, got that nice second half. They pulled off a great victory. They ran up some points. Not a lot of points, but they ran enough points. LA to cover this one, no problem. 6.5. Give me the half point again. I'll just take it. LA, the Chargers -6. The over under at 39. The only reason I'm going to go under is I don't think that Carolina is going to put any points on the board. I think they're going to get to Bryce Young. I will say, Joey Bosa, took a shot at him last week, but he played an excellent game against the Raiders. And for some reason, Khalil Mack just refuses to get old. So he's still playing like he's Ray Lewis out there, and he had a fantastic game too. So I think the Chargers are going to they're going to rattle this kid no problem in the backfield. They're going to hurry him a lot, and I think he's just still got some jitters, probably 3-4 weeks into the season before you see him settle down.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how anybody right now can. I mean, outside of, a New York Giants or a Washington or a Denver, how you with a straight face you can, pick Carolina at anything right now. So with that being said, I like the Chargers here. Give me the 6.5 easily. I'm with you. I could see the Chargers scoring 31 points and it staying under. I can see this being 31-3, 31-6, and that keeps us under the 38.5. So I will take the under there. But I also could see this turning into a 20-6, where the Chargers dominate, but not great offensively. They do just enough. But the other kind of ironic part of this is obviously the Chargers started at home and now they'll be on the road. I actually think this will be a less hostile environment than what they were in last week at home, because I don't know if you saw video or if you heard the crowd react. I mean, it was close to 80% Raider fans. Obviously it didn't affect the Chargers too much or really at all for the most part. But yeah, I mean, I believe you can find, if you're in the greater North Carolina, Charlotte, the greater Charlotte area, I believe you could pick up a ticket for $2, and you might actually pay more in fees than the actual ticket. So if you're looking for something to do on Sunday and you don't really value your time too much, check out your Carolina Panthers. But no, with that being said,
27% chance of rain.
Oh, okay. That's
also going to impact the score.
Yeah, and the defenses are ahead of the offenses. Even the bad defenses are ahead of the bad offenses. Carolina is, if Cleveland didn't exist, Carolina, well, maybe I'll throw the Giants in there too, but if those teams didn't exist, Carolina would be the laughingstock of the league. It's really unfortunate. I don't have any ill will towards that franchise, but they are in for a long few years. And I really do hope Bryce Young figures it out. But as you said, if anything we saw last week is any indication, it doesn't look like we saw a whole lot there. So yeah, give me the Chargers with the 6.5 and under 38.5. I just don't see how Carolina gets in the end zone until they prove me wrong. But moving on to possibly the game of the week, or at least maybe on paper, the game of the week. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. They are heading to Arrowhead to face the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, this moved quite a bit, actually. It was 6 when I put this together. This has now dropped down to 4.5. All of these lines are per Bovada. And the over-under sits at 47.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Bengals heading to Arrowhead as 4.5-point underdogs.
Yeah, I will tell you, the Chiefs, I've said it during preseason. I said it going into last week, and you're probably going to hear me say it and say it and say it. Chiefs haven't plateaued. They just have not plateaued. They came out last week, and, Hollywood Jones is out. Oh, no, now what are we going to do? And Kelsey was not – he made a couple plays, but he was not a factor. He was not the guy that made the big plays or kept him in the game every quarter. I think he ended up having 3 touches, and that was it, if I'm not mistaken. But Mahomes spread it around. That little Worthy, the running back, my
told you.
God, holy cow. I mean, now, and I guess he plays both, running back and receiver. He can go either way. And oh goodness, though, put the ball in his hands, and wow, they just picked up another weapon, a real dangerous weapon. And the offensive line played a very, very good game. Cincinnati, on the other hand, I don't know. I don't know that they're going to do anything that just sets the league on fire or makes everybody shudder like they did a couple seasons back. They were 3 and out their first 3 possessions against New England. 3 and out. And that's, wow, that just isn't, that's not making a statement. I'm real big that you always need to get that first down, at least on the first possession, even if you don't get a score. At least get a first down. Don't do 3 and out. But 3 and out 3 times, well, that takes you all the way through the first quarter, basically. And then Burrow's being sacked 3 times, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast. So I really think Kansas City is going to be geared up, dialed in, and they have done their scouting. They're going to have game plans, probably 4 or 5 deep for every look that Cincinnati can throw at them, and watch the linebackers for the Chiefs. I think they're going to maybe, do some timing stunts and get in there and rattle old Mr. Burrow again. I won't be surprised if I see him go down 3 more times, if not 4.
Yeah, I think Kansas City's defense is actually better than New England's. I think New England has a good defense, but Kansas City's defense is premier. I think what they were able to do to Baltimore, obviously, look, they got their points, I know, and, they were a toe away from possibly losing that game. But they were able to not only stop Lamar, but contain Lamar. And I know he rushed for over 100 yards, but I guarantee you, if you talk to Steve Spagnuolo, that's how he wants him to get his yards. It's fine. We'll deal with it that way. And then, he won't admit this, but there is always that possibility when you're racking up those rush yards that you don't get down fast enough. And if Lamar's out of the game, it makes the job easier on the defense. I'm not saying they're trying to hurt him. I'm just saying logic. Anyways, Kansas City, and like you, I've been saying it as well all offseason, ever since Buffalo traded out of that pick, and I looked around and went, are they really going to let Kansas City get Xavier Worthy? I'm sure the people listening have probably already fast forwarded through this part of because they know all I'm going to be talking about is Xavier Worthy, because that's all I've been doing all offseason, and he proved me right. His first touch takes on a jet sweep, 22 yards to the house, wasn't touched. His electric speed. He is going to be a problem. And I think Cincinnati, they will find their footing, I think. I don't think it's this week. If this game was in Cincinnati, maybe, but I like Kansas City at -6. So I love them at 4.5. I think Kansas City wins this game by a touchdown. In terms of the over-under, I'm a little worried I have a lot of unders. So maybe that's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but I do like the under here as well. I think Cincinnati's defense as well, and again, it was Jacoby Brissett and the New England Patriots, but I think Cincinnati's defense is really good as well. They have their moments where they can go out and they can really change games, maybe more of a bend but don't break defense. So I do like the under here. I also believe that both of these teams think, hey, there's a pretty good shot we see each other again in January. It's week 2. Maybe we don't pull that 2-point play out, or maybe we don't, do this or that. A little more vanilla offense. I don't know. Just kind of spitballing. But I do like the under in this one. But I love Kansas City minus 4.5 in this one. So it's going to be interesting. I do just hope it's a good game. I hope Cincinnati shows up. And I hope Burrow, I mean, Joe Burrow is one of my favorite players. So I hope that we look back on this and go, okay, yeah, we did overreact, because that would not be good if Joe Burrow goes the way of Daniel Jones. But that might have been a little dramatic in me. But anyway, moving on to our final AFC West game. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are heading to Denver, to the Mile High City. They will be 3-point favorites against the Broncos. The over-under sits at 36.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Pittsburgh favorites as they head to Denver.
So Denver put up a decent fight against Seattle. And again, it's not, it wasn't Pete Carroll's Seahawks. It was, the new coach's Seahawks. But still, they put up an okay fight for a while. But I think we saw what Denver's going to be this year. And I think it's going to be a long season for them. They're going to, quite honestly, at this stage of the game, I think it's going to be them and the Raiders fighting for who gets 6 or 7 wins, and then be thankful if you can see that. They're not going to see a win this weekend against Pittsburgh. At -3, I like Pittsburgh on the road because of the Pittsburgh defense. For darn sure, Watt's going to be in there just, it's like you can't keep track of the guy. It's like he's a clone, and there's 2 of them out there at times. My question with Pittsburgh, they announced today that it is going to be Fields is going to be the starting quarterback. I don't know about that. I mean, I get you have to do what you got to do. He didn't light it up for Pittsburgh last week. I mean, what did they have? 18 points, something like that?
They didn't. Yeah. I don't think they scored a single offensive touchdown. Oh, no, it was all field goals. It was all field goals.
Right.
That's
right.
what it was.
So, they're going to have to do something. They got to get into the end zone. Is he the guy that's going to lead you to the promised land and to the end zone? It didn't look like it last week. And so we'll see what happens this week, but I still think they've got enough firepower to get past Denver. 36.5. Yeah, give me the half point, give me under 37. But I think it's another one of those, 20-10 type games.
Yeah, and if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy half a point. Yeah, I like Pittsburgh -2.5. Look, there were times where going to Denver, that the crowd will be there. They're great fan base. They're always loud. But a lot of it were the elements, getting used to the elevation, things like that. But I just think this team, Pittsburgh, is much better, even with Justin Fields back there. Bo Nix, I feel like I go back and forth on Bo Nix. There are times where I watch some of his college highlights. It's a lot of 5-6 yard moves and then a lot of speed after, which, hey, look, it is what it is. But then there are times where, look, he does make some really good throws, and it's just 1 week. It's against a good defense. I want to sit here and say that Bo Nix is the answer, but I don't think he is. I think Pittsburgh, and especially TJ Watt and that defense, get after him, make him very, very uncomfortable. And the other part of this, too, is we getting to the point where we need to start asking if maybe Sean Payton was a product of Drew Brees? Because, and I know it was an older Russell Wilson, but this is his time. This is a young quarterback that Sean Payton has had all offseason to mold, and that's what we saw. So I don't know. Like I said, it's just 1 week, but I'm going to ride with TJ Watt in this defense against a young rookie quarterback that hasn't really shown me a whole lot yet. And then also the under as well. I also just 20-10. That might even be pushing it for Denver. And maybe Pittsburgh, honestly. But yeah, I could see this 14-7, and it's just like one of those games that, for me, if you do watch Red Zone, you're like, wait, that's right, they are playing, because if you don't score a whole lot of points, you're not going to make Red Zone too often. But yeah, I don't see this one lighting up the scoreboard, and I think Pittsburgh even with the trip to the Mile High City, I think they get the job done and cover the 2.5 for me to buy that 0.5 point. But moving on, as we switch our attention to the NFC East, it is going to be, starting off for me, the Atlanta Falcons at and I just realized I did not put the Giants on this list. I forgot all about them. That's okay. Oh, no, never mind. I take it back. I'm sorry. I read the Giants as the Jets.
Yeah, you got them.
Yeah, I got them. Sorry. Anyways, moving on. Atlanta. They'll be heading to Philadelphia to face my Eagles. This will be Monday Night Football. The Eagles are going to be 6.5 point favorites. The over-under sits at 46.5. I'll get this one started. Obviously, the Eagles got their season started in Brazil. And I just got to say, the field conditions, not great. I don't know when the NFL is going to figure out that soccer fields are not exactly perfect for football. Not the same type of running, but maybe they'll figure that out. But anyways, I thought other than that, the atmosphere was fantastic. I was very, very surprised with Brazil. And I don't know, there were a lot of fans that took videos and all that stuff and made it seem like a lot of those security things and stuff like that were overblown. I'm just glad everybody got home safe and everyone seemed to have had a good time, and the Eagles won. But yeah, I do want to say, I did not think that was going to be a good idea. And like I said, outside the field conditions, it seemed like a fantastic atmosphere. And Jalen Hurts got off to, for the Eagles as a whole, it was the worst start to the first two possessions you could ever have. Two biggest question marks the Eagles had coming into this season. Is Jalen Hurts going to get the interception stuff under control? How do you replace a guy like Jason Kelce? Eagles first possession, Jalen Hurts throws an interception. Second possession, Cam Jurgens mistimes a snap. Eagles fumble the ball, leads to a field goal. Terrible start. Luckily, this defense was able on both of those drives to hold the Packers to field goals because they were in pretty much field goal position right away. Eagles were able to figure it out on offense, get the ball rolling. Jalen Hurts definitely will show you glimpses. My worry is I'm starting to get the same feeling I got towards the end of the Carson Wentz era in terms of him trying to do too much. It's the same thing that Sam Darnold did at USC. He tried to do too much. You have a lot of weapons out there. Take the check down. Antonio Brown was running 5-yard curl routes and making the first man miss all game. Take the easy dump, move on, get back into the huddle, and keep rolling. I thought other than that, everything looked good. Saquon Barkley, goodness gracious. Giants fans have to be just out of the... I think I saw a stat that Saquon Barkley had more touchdowns in that game than Daniel Jones had all of the last 2 seasons, or at least last season. Wow. But yeah, so that was a massive bright spot. I do really like what I saw out of the defense. There were moments where it just seemed like, here we go again. But Zach Braun, where did he come from? Of all the guys that I expected, he had a huge game. So I think for the Eagles going forward, it was something to build on. Now, in terms of Monday night to face Kirk Cousins, the Atlanta Falcons, obviously the Falcons definitely underperformed. There were a lot of people that were wondering, are we going to be screaming for Michael Penix earlier than expected? I think that might be a bit of an overreaction. I still think it's Kirk Cousins is probably going to be the guy going forward. And if he isn't, I don't think Michael Penix is the answer. But anyways, for this game, I do think, I think 6.5 is a disrespectful number to the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Falcons are good enough to get a closer number, 3-4. So I will buy 0.5 point. I like Atlanta +7. And in terms of the over-under, I like the over here. I do think I think Atlanta is going to come out and they're going to say, you know what, let's open things up. Let's see what Kirk can really do. It was good to see Kyle Pitts get in the end zone. I know we kind of chuckle about that, but hey, that's that we're building on that. So I think Atlanta will come in. Eagles will win the football game. It'll probably be a Jake Elliott field goal late. The Eagles will have me watching the game in the fetal position, ripping my hair out for extended periods of time, but they'll do enough to win this football game. And then for the Eagles going forward, they got 3 straight NFC South teams starting this week before they hit their very early bye. So for the Eagles, they got to be looking at this as, okay, let's get to 4-0, get to the bye. And then you start at Carolina later in the year too. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure Coach will have something to say about that in a few weeks, but I don't know. I think Atlanta is good enough to cover the spread here. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Falcons facing the Birds.
Yeah, it's funny. The only note I put down on this game, I put 2 words: poor Kirk. I mean, that's really it couldn't have been a worse start for the guy for game 1. And and I like the guy. I sure don't want to come out here and criticize the guy, but it was just not a good start for his season. Philadelphia, I thought Philadelphia played very, very well. I agree with you. I think it pulled off better than I imagined.
Yeah.
I know the experience down there. I think they ran the fan fest through the weekend. They gave them all through Sunday so that people could still go out and do the interactive stuff and buy the souvenirs, and people were just having a great time. One thing that stood out for me, which has nothing to do with football, and it probably has more to do with the final thoughts in 9/11. One thing that really stood out to me was when they went into their national anthem, those people sang, and they were proud, and their chests are out, and they're smiling, and they got their arms around each other. You don't see that in the United States. You got people that refuse to take their caps off, walk up and down. They're too busy drinking their beer and talking to somebody next to them, don't know the words to the song. So it was I thought it was a very, very good look for the host country down there. And, kudos to them for that. As far as the game itself goes, I thought Philadelphia played very, very well. It's a shame what happened to Jordan Love. My gosh, do you hate to see that happen? But I thought Philadelphia, they righted the ship. It's like you said, when they first pulled out of the slip, the boat was kind of rocking and wasn't going in a straight line, which doesn't get you point A to point B the most efficient way, but they pulled it together. They did very, very well. Will they win this game? Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be, I don't think they're going to get a touchdown win. I think they'll get a 4-point win, maybe 5. 46.5. I can see this being 27-23. Yeah. So let me take. I'll give Atlanta an entire touchdown on this one. Give them 7, and we'll go over 46.
Yeah, a beautiful national anthem as well, by the way. I've never heard it sang. The only time I've ever heard it is at like World Cups, and that's they just play the instruments. So she had a beautiful voice. It's a beautiful song as well. I mean, and obviously I love the Star Spangled Banner. But yeah, it was great. It was fantastic. And yeah, that is a nice little kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Teaser for our final thoughts, because that's exactly where I'm going with mine as well. But yeah, everything went well. And again, the biggest thing is everyone got home safe. And I should have brought up Jordan Love. Thank goodness it wasn't a tear. I believe it was just a sprain or something. Well, it's the 3 to 6 week. He's not out for the year. They are going to have to deal with Malik Willis for the next few weeks, but definitely could have been worse, especially considering that play didn't really, I mean, they're driving to, try to win the game. I get that, but it was kind of one of those like Hail Mary lateral things. Mm-hmm. Probably would have been a tough way to lose your franchise quarterback for the season week 1. So they'll have to deal with that for a bit, but could have been much worse. But we are going to stick in the NFC East. Got the New York Giants. They are heading to Washington. The Commanders are going to be 2-point favorites in this one. That line did move just a little bit. The over-under in this one is going to be 44. I'll get this one started. The Giants. Look, we've kind of already talked about the Daniel Jones saga and the Saquon Barkley saga and stuff like that. I don't want to pile on. Well, that's kind of a lie. I don't really like the Giants and their fans too much. So we just got to be honest, though. The Giants right now are in one of the worst situations you can be in, because you have a quarterback who you gave a lot of money to for an extended period of time who is not him. And when that happens, you can't put a whole lot behind him. You need to hit on your 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, and it's not happening. This is a team that is lucky to probably be facing off against Washington. I do like Washington in this game. I think -2 is, I mean, that's pretty much money line for me. But yeah, sure. I'll just to get those numbers a little closer. I'll take the 2 points. I think Washington wins this game by at least a field goal. I think we are going to stay under 44, though. Jaden Daniels, I saw glimpses of him on the ground, but wasn't impressed with him through the air. But once again, it's his first start. I think of all the rookie quarterbacks, he's probably the rawest or has the most to kind of improve. I don't know all that, but it's going to be a work in progress. I think what we see week 2 versus what we see week 16, week 17, it's going to be a big, very, very telling of what we'll see going forward with Jaden Daniels. I think they get the job done here, though. I think they just have more talent. I think this is just a more harmonious team. I mean, I would not be surprised. We're already going to start hearing sound clips of anonymous sources in that locker room. I don't know. It's getting ugly fast in New Jersey / New York for the Giants. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Giants heading to the Commanders.
Yeah, I actually went into week 1 giving Daniel Jones the benefit of the doubt that he was going to come back, shake off the cobwebs, and get out there and put together a decent game. Boy, was I completely wrong on that. He's not going to do any better this week. Washington, on the other hand, they didn't have a bad game against they played Tampa Bay, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and Mayfield, kudos to him. He had a great game. I think he threw for 4 touchdowns.
He was the best quarterback this week.
Yeah, definitely. So, Tampa Bay, definitely a different animal. They're not the Giants, but Washington was competitive, and Washington will be competitive at home. Trust me, they're going to have this one under control, no problem. I don't think the Giants are going to even be in the game after the first half, if they're even in it after the first quarter. I'm with you. I'm just going to go money line on this one. I would not even take the points. Just give me Washington money line if it's already at 2. But I'm with you. I like under 44 because I can see this being, 27-10. It might be 24-9, something like that. But yeah, it's not going to be a big run on points.
Yeah, and I think Vegas, I'm actually surprised Vegas put 44, especially considering, I mean, we've seen some 30s and 44 seems like a lot for this game, but take advantage, like I said, and who knows, maybe, sometimes you do have to take a step back and be like, wait, hold on a second, that does look a little too good, but 44, definitely the under there. Moving on to our final NFC East game we will be previewing. It is the New Orleans Saints. They are heading to Arlington to face the Dallas Cowboys, fresh off their dominant win over Cleveland. Cowboys are going to be 6.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 45. I would say outside of Tampa, and maybe San Francisco, Dallas was one of the more impressive performances we saw. And I would put them even higher than the others because, I mean, at least I think Cleveland's better than the Jets. Well, maybe not. But that was a good defense at the very least. Dallas was able to take care of them pretty handily. New Orleans, it goes back to how you kind of started the show, right? What do we get? Is New Orleans that good? Carolina that bad? I think it's more Carolina being that bad, but I do think New Orleans is pretty good. However, Dallas in September, they are gangbusters. This is they're kind of like the opposite of Cincinnati. I don't have any, stats or whatever, but I guarantee you can go look it up. This is a team that gets off the hot starts. I think they get the job done against New Orleans. I do think they cover. I think they win this game by a touchdown. Dak's paid, CD's paid, that defense is healthy, or as healthy as they're probably going to be all season. The run game is going to be a question mark because if they're going to run Zeke Elliott all year, that may come back to haunt them. I just don't think it haunts them against New Orleans. I do think we go over 45.5 though here. I think we're going to see not so much a shootout, but I think New Orleans is going to get their licks in and Dallas is definitely going to get their licks in. I could very easily see this being a 31-21 game. That's kind of where I see it at, maybe even higher. But Raider Jim, your thoughts, New Orleans heading to the Lone Star State.
Yeah, this is that matchup that, I think there was a couple seasons ago, or I'm sure it happens at least once a season. You initially look at the game and you think, oh, this is Dallas has got it no problem. Then New Orleans goes into Jerry's house and they rack up 58 points and they beat the Cowboys to pieces. I don't think they're going to beat the Cowboys to pieces. I think they're going to cover for sure. I think Carr is going to have a pretty decent game. He also has a good running game to back him up. So they've got that. They got that good mix, and so now it's on the defense. And are they going to be able to control the line? Can they control the line? Well, we'll see about that. But I think I would take the Saints +7 on this one. I'm with you. I think over 45 for sure. I see it being, like you said, it's going to be like 28-24. It's going to be something like that. Dallas was firing on all cylinders last week, but they were playing a preoccupied, if you will, or distracted Cleveland team. I don't know how else to put it, but distracted with an offense that wasn't able to do much of anything. So it's going to be a little bit different for them this weekend, and I know they know that. But New Orleans also has to come out and make that statement. That old guy out in San Diego who wants to know, are we that good or is Carolina that bad? We're going to show them we're that good. So watch for New Orleans to come out and put up some good numbers, yards and points.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the better games of the
Fun
weekend.
Game.
Yeah, this is a fun one. I think you're just going to, kind of sit back, watch, and enjoy. I think, I have them up right here. Is this 125 for us out here? No, it's a 10 o'clock game. Son of a gun. Dallas gets 10 o'clock games. Anyways, so, it'll be in the early window, but that will be a nice little, game to kind of keep an eye on there. Moving on, our final game we will be detailing and previewing in detail. Wow. It's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're heading to Detroit to face the Lions. The Lions are 7-point favorites in this one, and the over-under sits at 51.5. Raider Jim, I'm going to give you first crack at this one. Buccaneers heading to face Dan Campbell's Lions.
Yeah, Detroit had hiccups against the Rams. They started out good, but then all of a sudden the Rams kept into the game. The Rams took it to the bitter end. The Rams tied the game. Not a good look for Detroit, and something that I'm sure that they spent a lot of time looking at on probably today, because I think that was the Monday night game, so I'm sure they gave them a little bit of time off yesterday. But maybe they made them watch it on the plane. Who knows? But Detroit did come back, and I will tell you, I sent that text out to yourself and Coach. That overtime drive to seal the deal was one of the most tactical, calculated, and it was a work of art and perfection. They owned it when they had to do it. They owned it. How do you win? Just don't let the other guy's offense get back on the field. And that's what they did. They controlled it. However, it shouldn't have come to that for Detroit. They had a nice, comfortable lead going into the third, fourth quarter, and they couldn't hang on to it. Now they're going against my old buddy Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. I just like the way Mayfield's playing. Is he going to have the same success as this week as he did last week? I don't know, because I'll tell you what, he threw for 4 touchdowns last week, and the Rams were able to throw successfully against Detroit, and I think Mayfield might be able to put together a few drives. I will give one extra half point. I'll take Tampa Bay +7.5 on this one. And then the over-under, I got to believe they're going to go, maybe I take a whole point on this one and go 50.5, but I think we're going to see points in this one.
I agree with you. I think Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield, his kind of redemption story. And, we talk about, the guys like Deshaun Watson and stuff like that. But then we have guys like Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield who are really easy to root for, and maybe you don't like Baker because you don't like his commercials, or maybe, you don't like him because of what he did at Oklahoma, whatever. That's fine. It's a lot different than some of the reasons we're not big Deshaun Watson fans here. Baker Mayfield's story, he bet on himself last year. He signed a 1-year deal. He said, look, I'm going to go to Tampa where I can start. I'm going to prove that I'm a starting quarterback in this league. He did just that, got paid. He's in Tampa. I was very, very impressed with what he put together. As we kind of mentioned, he was the best quarterback last week. He's a fantastic story. I was very surprised putting this together that Detroit was 7-point favorites. I like Detroit. I think Detroit's a good football team, and I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit wins this game. But I don't know if anybody's a whole lot better than or 7 points better than Tampa Bay right now.
Right.
Mike Evans, you want to talk about not getting old. I mean, Mike Evans, I feel like he's been playing for 20 years and he's had 1,000 yards in he's timeless. He's ageless. He is very, very underrated. Everyone talks about the Jamar Chases, Justin Jeffersons. And meanwhile, Mike Evans is a top 5 wide receiver every single year. And that's great for Baker to have that there. For Detroit, I completely agree. It was almost like they were, I hate to say it, but it was in the script. It's like, hey, it's Sunday Night Football. Let's put a bow on their first week. We need you to get to overtime, but we'll make sure, once you get to overtime, just run it down their throats and you'll win. Everyone signed up for that. But that last drive was, student body right. Well, maybe not so much, but power right, power left over and over and over. Just body shot after body shot after body shot until it ended in the end zone. And for the Rams, I think that they can take some positives out of it. But for this game, Detroit will probably win, but I don't think they cover. And I'm with you, 7.5. Give me that half a point. And I am going to go over in this one as well. I do think we're going to see some points. These were the two offenses that I think really, and I know Goff did throw an interception, and I think he almost, that did get overturned. So he did throw kind of a costly interception. But these are two quarterbacks that I think are going to, for the most part, protect the football. And that's the other part about Baker Mayfield. He's a gunslinger. And last year, his interceptions dropped mightily. Because that's the one thing, you got your Gardner Minshew's and some of the others. You're going to have to take the good with the bad, unfortunately. And that's how it used to be with Baker Mayfield. But he has cleaned that part of his game up. That makes him on track to be a very, very good quarterback. I think they do enough to cover, if not win. I don't know. Take a look at the money line on this one. I was very impressed with Tampa last week. So yeah, give me Tampa 7.5 and the over 51.5. I do want to say one thing, and I knew I was going to forget to say this because I'm going all the way back to last Thursday's game. It was Kansas City and Baltimore. There was one play in particular that I don't think is being talked about nearly enough. And believe me, everybody will talk about how great Mahomes is and all that stuff. And I agree. However, possibly the biggest play of that game, or at least maybe one of the most consequential plays of that game, was the last offensive play for Kansas City from the line of scrimmage. It was 3rd and 8. It's 2:20 left on the clock, fourth quarter. Mahomes drops back, goes to pass. The defensive lineman bats it up. Mahomes catches it.
That was fantastic.
And goes down. And now, okay, everyone's like, oh my God, he stopped the interception. Not only did he stop the interception, he completed the catch because then the clock continued to run. So what changed was, instead of Baltimore getting the ball at, 2 minutes and 15 seconds after the punt, they have a built-in 2-minute warning. Instead, they got the ball back at 1:55. Mm-hmm. And just throwing it out there, the toe still would have maybe possibly been an issue, but you had an extra 25, 30 seconds. Huge play for Mahomes. He's so good. But I wanted to mention that when we talk Kansas City. I knew I was going to forget it because it was all the way last Thursday, popped into my mind. But anyways, our final bit will be talking about, these are just kind of some of the other games. If anything kind of catches our fancy, we'll say something about them. But we got Cleveland and Deshaun Watson. They're heading to Jacksonville. The Jaguars are going to be 3-point favorites. Over under is at 42. Indy will be 3.5-point favorites. And the over-under will be 40.5 as they head to Green Bay. Yes, Indy, 3.5-point favorites against Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers. Seattle will be 3.5-point favorites. They're heading to Foxborough to face the Patriots. That over-under sits at 38. Sunday Night Football is Chicago. They're heading to Houston. They'll face the Texans. Texans are going to be 6.5-point favorites. 45.5 in that one is the over-under. Rams and Cardinals, that'll be in Arizona. Cardinals, 1.5-point favorites there. 49.5. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers survived week 1. Congratulations to him. Don't ask about the rest of the game. Jets, 3.5-point favorites. They will head to Tennessee, another team don't ask about last week. The over-under sits at 40.5. And finally, San Francisco 49ers. Doesn't seem like Christian McCaffrey is going to be back from everything I'm hearing. Anyways, they are going to be 6-point favorites as they head to face Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings. 45.5 is the over-under there. Raider Jim, any of those games you want to throw your thoughts into?
Well, I'll tell you what, the first one I'm going to just pick right out of there is I'm going to tell you New England starts 2-0.
Yeah.
New England is going to take care of business against Seattle. And they just got that. The hell, we were supposed to be bad, and everybody else says we're bad. Nobody sent us a registered letter saying you have to be bad. So watch for them to come out and watch the defense to keep them in it. I think Jacksonville, no problem with Cleveland at -3. I like that a lot. The one that surprises me is Houston 6.5. 6.5 against Chicago, and again, it was a very challenged Chicago team last week. But 6.5, that seems a bit much. I don't know if I wouldn't go a half a point on that one and give Chicago +7. By no means do I think the Bears are going to win that game in Houston because I think old Mixon's going to go crazy again and run for another 150 yards probably. But 6.5, that's a big line there. The Arizona line is very intriguing.
Very.
I'm going to have to really take a look and dissect that one because I can't believe Arizona is the caliber team that the Lions are. And the Rams hung with the Lions. So we'll see what happens with that one. But like I say, I'm going to do more homework on that before I make any decision on it. But yeah, watch for New England. I'm kind of going to be watching them now. And I hope they do well.
Yeah, I have 2 just written down here, and one of them is New England. I have them +3.5 / money line with a question mark, just because, Sunday morning, see what that looks like. I think New England they're really good defense with a quarterback who is going to keep you in football games. And Jacoby Brissett is not going to win you Super Bowls, but he's not going to be bad enough to be replaced with the number 1 overall pick. That he's so bad. So what's ironic is the Patriot fans, and I do believe they'll probably start 2-0. They'll probably get to 6, 7, 8 wins, and the Patriot fans might go, "Oh, that's great." But once again, I've always said that's not the place you want to be in the NFL. Now it's a little different because they do have, supposedly the quarterback that they do want. But when you're 7, 8, 9 wins, that's you're drafted at like 14 through 18, which that's fine, but you're going to have to get a little lucky in that situation. So I had that one down. And then I also have Tennessee. Give me a half a point, +4. I wasn't terribly impressed with the Jets. I didn't think Aaron Rodgers looked incredible. They had one drive where I was like, oh, okay, is that what we're going to see? And then nothing else. And I know it was the San Francisco defense. I get that. I don't know. Even Breece Hall, I felt like I wanted to see a little more out of Breece Hall. I'm wondering if Saleh's the right guy for the job. 4 points, field goal. I can see the Jets winning by a field goal and we still cash our ticket. Give me the Tennessee Titans. But yeah, that's so kind of some of the thoughts on the other games. Final thoughts, Raider Jim. I think we're going to be kind of lock, stock, and barrel on this one, but your thoughts first.
Yeah, definitely cannot end this segment without talking about what today is, the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. Didn't matter if you're a football fan, baseball fan, if you're a sports fan at all, or if you love the theater, if you love the arts, it impacted the entire nation. And in a very, very sad way, a very harsh, critical way. And at the same time, there was a little bit of resurgence and rejuvenation to supporting the nation and the flag and things like that. It's really something to think about. Most of the graduating the graduating classes from universities and all of the graduating classes from high schools were not even here when 9/11 took place. And yet my faith was somewhat restored as I saw a news story here locally about elementary school up in our North County who put out little flags. They send the students out. They put little flags on the lawn at the school, and they talked to this young man who probably couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 years old. And he said, well, we're doing this because we have to remember the people who lost their lives that day, because these people mattered. They mattered. It's not like they just went away and disappeared. They mattered, and we have to remember them. And he said it so succinctly, and so he delivered it with such conviction. And I thought, boy, so there's somebody's teaching these kids right. And it was good to see. But again, it doesn't happen just on 9/11. I think of that often anytime I hear that there's upheaval in the Mideast, and you wonder if they're going to start sending our men and women of the armed forces into harm's way. Let's just hope that it never happens again, and let's never let those people who were impacted and affected leave our thoughts.
Amen. Yeah, it's 23 years. I mean, for me, I was 2001, so I was 13. I mean, I vividly remember that. My aunt worked in not the World Trade, but she worked in the outer ring. Luckily, thank the Lord, she was on vacation in Rome, but she lost people. It's difficult, but 9/11 for me, obviously, and anybody who lived through it, it was the epoch. Everything changed after. Like I bring up, I used to be able to walk my grandma all the way to, like, we would sit with my grandma before she boarded her flight. We didn't have tickets. We just walked straight to the gate.
Right.
Everything changed. And that was that epoch in time where we all just pre and post 9/11. And I do find it a little ironic. The irony is not lost on me that last night, of course, was September 10th, and there was a debate. We go back to September 11th, 2001. Terrible day. Probably one of the worst days in this country, at least this century. September 12th, still a very, very somber day. But we didn't have Republican and Democrats September 12th. We had Americans. Everybody had an American flag on their front lawn. Everybody was shaking the hand of a cop, fireman, serviceman and women, everything. If you served your community, you were a hero. So it's almost like one of those things, like, I don't want the cause to happen again, but I want the effect to happen without the cause. And obviously I know that's not going to happen, but I hope it does. And I hope that, again, we get reminded of today. Everything changed 23 years ago for millions of people. You can't throw a rock in New York City and not meet someone who was affected that day. Anyone really on the Eastern Seaboard, if we're being completely honest, and even further throughout the entire country. We came together as a country. We were patriotic. We looked out for our neighbors. We looked out for each other. We weren't hateful. And again, I want to get back to that without the 9/11. I want to get back to 9/12. So hopefully we can work towards that. And again, stop hating. It doesn't matter who you vote for. You can disagree and still have dinner with someone. You can disagree, still have a civil conversation, shake someone's hand and go, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with that. But you know what? Wednesday, that first Wednesday in November, when everything's all dusting, guess what? We're all going to have to wake up and go to work. We're all going to have to take care of each other, regardless of who's in the White House. So with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the original Call to Post. Oh my goodness, I knew it was only a matter of time, Raider Jim. That's okay though. There's only like 3 or 4 people that are still listening. So that's a little Easter egg for all of you people out there. Let me try that again.
Don't forget tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I'll mess up tomorrow. But anyways, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands, and please stop hating everyone. Take care.
Peace out.